Thank you, Mitchell, and welcome from me. It's, as Mitchell mentioned, it's actually our third HashiConf, but what he didn't mention is it's almost exactly 5 years since the founding of HashiCorp itself. So the velocity of adoption of our products has actually been kind of amazing. For a relatively short period of time to see the number of people that put up their hands when we asked who was running this in production is a big number. But what we really saw over the last 24 months is almost sort of a step function shift in adoption, not just by end users, but also by the partner ecosystem around us. And you saw that from some of the announcements that came out today, where our products are being used not just by some of the largest entities in the globe to run their own infrastructure, but also increasingly underpinning sort of foundational elements of the cloud ecosystem, which is really, really fun for us. But it's also something we take super seriously. And so as a company, we've been, for the last 12 months, investing super aggressively. And we've been really investing across basically 3 vectors. One of them is around the product and engineering organization itself, where our engineering organization, as you can see from the 150 releases that we put out over the last 12 months of our core product portfolio, has more than doubled in the last 12 months. And it'll continue to expand, if not double again, over the next 12 to 18 months. Secondarily, we recognize that a lot of our users are sort of navigating this transition from a relatively traditional way of running infrastructure to a more cloud-oriented approach for running infrastructure. It may not always be on cloud infrastructure, but philosophically, it's a slightly different way of running infrastructure. And so we've invested really, really heavily in our support and success organization to help customers navigate that transition. And the third, and this has been a really big push for us, is we recognize that we need to be with technical expertise where our users are. So we over the last 12 months have established presence really all over the globe. We now have technical resources on the ground on the East Coast, on the West Coast, in the Central, in the Federal area. I was in London last week. We have, I believe, 8 people in the UK today. We have teams in Japan and Australia. We also have customers in Korea. And that is something you'll see us continue to do, because this, in our view, is sort of a generational shift of how infrastructure is deployed and run. And so we need to be where our customers are, not just sitting remotely from our offices here. And I think, actually a good example of this, it caught my attention that the London meetup group alone for HashiCorp is over 1,500 people, right? So it's not even affiliated with us necessarily, but it gives you a sense for the stuff is used everywhere. But it's really the engineering organization and investments that have allowed us to make the announcements that we made today. And I just wanted to play them back because, as you see, we believe strongly that there are 4 essential elements of infrastructure, right? There's a provisioning layer, there's a security layer, there's a runtime layer, and then there's the need to connect everything together. So what we announced today was actually updates across that entire portfolio. On the Terraform side, we announced the Terraform module registry, which, as I can tell on Twitter and on Hacker News, is already super popular. I think it's going to put some pressure on our operational teams to, to match it. Also, the newer version of Terraform Enterprise, which adds collaboration and governance capabilities to the running of Terraform in a large organization, as Mitchell identified. Secondarily, we announced Vault Kubernetes support, which has been a real request. We realize there's a lot of heterogeneity across infrastructure stacks, and it's important to us that we enable people to run the technologies of their choice. Kubernetes has been an important one for us. Console 1.0 and Nomad 0.7 are huge. And then we introduced Sentinel as a really sort of a governance model to apply across all 4 layers of our stack. And while the company's changed a lot over the last, let's call it 24 months, the philosophies that underpin how we think about the world really haven't, right? Mitchell and Armand started this journey with the view that enterprises are heterogeneous things. Yesterday it was virtual machines, tomorrow it'll be, today it's containers, tomorrow it'll be something else. And so what we do instead is we focus on the workflows, not the technologies. You see that in our approach and philosophy with respect to Terraform, where not only has the provider ecosystem expanded as it relates to support for more and more cloud infrastructures, for example, you saw some of the ones today, but basically across any infrastructure type that you might choose to provision, there's a Terraform provider support. But more interesting to me, actually, is there are now more than 70 Terraform providers, and we have a queue that we're certifying of another 10 behind that, because as you all in the room have used Terraform to provision infrastructure to your cloud partners, the ISV vendors that you work with and must be included in that provisioning experience have stepped up and created Terraform providers to allow their products to be provisioned as part of that single experience. It is that focus on the workflows, not the technologies, which is just underpins our whole philosophical approach. The second core principle is around automation through codification. That's a belief in immutability and the need to codify given the scale of the environments we all operate. Sentinel is a good example of how we are now applying the governance model for distributed infrastructure through codification. Sentinel also includes, I should add, the ability to extend to the plugin mechanism to whatever backend system you may want to connect to that experience. So the philosophy around openness and extensibility, recognizing that you need to be able to extend our products to your specific environments, which are highly differentiated, as any large company is, those remain the underpinnings for how we think about philosophically our approach.